I have one extra.
More than half the videos
Pass it back. I think, yeah. If that's extra copy, pass it back. I think.
What's extra?
Yeah, get her out the way.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, it's coming.
It's okay, I got you.
All right. Let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of things to cover today. And I mentioned last week that last week was half, now like we doubled. I don't know what happened. I think word got out like we're learning in class. We just showed up. It's good. I'm not gonna complain. But here's the thing. So I didn't think a lot of people would come, but so the first time we did this, because we did this 2 years ago. We learned about this 2 years ago, right? So the people who were learning it a second time, a lot of this stuff should be reviewed, and we were kind of touching up on it in the office earlier, right? So I didn't want like most of the stuff just to be repetitive, so I added a lot of new things in there. Unfortunately, for the new people who are taking this for the first time, this might be the first time that you're hearing any of this. Maybe some of you guys heard it somewhere else before, whatever the case might be. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm like literally just gonna dump like a lot of information at you guys at once. So I'm expecting people to see me after class, call me up and say, hey, you know that theorem, that theory, whatever you talked about in class, I don't know what it is, I don't get it. So I'm expecting for people to call me and to let me know that they didn't understand the specific thing, or they didn't understand it. So please call me. I'm expecting your phone call this week. Okay, I will have office hours just for you. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of things to review. There's a lot of things to cover. Again, I'm gonna be running because we gotta finish this today. Like next week is a new course. I'm working against the deadline. This course has to finish in August, no exceptions. So I'm working against the deadline, so we just gotta get through this today. It's gonna be a little rough, so let's do it. Today, the objective for today is to ask a different question before. Usually when we talk about Halawat Exabir, the existence of God, we start, and by the way, like I said, I'm gonna be running throughout the day. I hope everybody's gonna stay with me. Like if you look away, you miss one theorem. And that's it. Yeah.
So are there no copies left?
There are more copies
Oh, they're
coming.
coming.
Yeah, they're coming. They're on their way. You just got one right now. Boom. Look at that. So this is what happened. When we talk about Halawat Exabir, are we together? Are we together? Okay. So when we talk about Halawat Exabir, the existence of God, usually we ask the question, how do we know God exists, right? We usually ask, how do we know God exists, right? But today we're asking a different type of question first. So we're first going to ask, do we even need to ask the question, God exists? Do we even need to ask that question? Is it important? And if it is important, then we're going to ask the question, God does exist, right? So how do we know God exists? We're going to look at what's known as the ontological argument, which basically says the existence. It's the study of ontology, which is the existence, what exists and what doesn't exist. We're going to look at the teleological argument, or you guys know it as the fine-tuning argument, which is this universe is finely tuned, and who tuned it in that specific way that allows life to exist in this universe. We're going to look at the moral argument, which says that there's objective morality, and because there's objective morality, we know that there's a standard for morality, and then we're going to ask, how did that moral standard come about? And of course, there's a historical argument which says, since the beginning of time, people at one time or another have at least thought about a higher being, and where does that come from? It doesn't matter where they're from, it doesn't matter where they are, they have this innate desire to be connected to a higher being. Why does that happen? So we're going to look at all these things. Again, first we're going to look at the question. We're going to ask a different question. And if you guys have taken Halot Exagger, you start off by saying, we know God exists and we know it because of X, Y, Z. But instead of doing that, should we even ask the question, does it matter? According to Stephen Hawking, he says, there is no need to even believe in God anymore, right? And we've discovered everything that we need to know about the universe. There is no place for God in this universe, and there is no need to believe in Him. So this is kind of the new atheism that's moving around. There's no need to believe in God, even if He existed. So people are like, it absolutely matters. Yeah, it does. We believe that, but we got to see why. So here's the thing. If God does not exist, life does not have meaning, value, and purpose. And that's your first fill in the blank. Life does not have meaning, value, and purpose. Meaning significance, value meaning good and evil, right or wrong, purpose meaning goal or reason for something.
It's not like you already answered it.
Did I? I printed the wrong one. I printed the wrong page. I gave you all the answers for everything.
Nah, it's just
It's just that
It was just the first one? It was a late night, people. Stayed up all night trying to get this right. ESO case. Don't laugh at me. So here's the thing. So meaning, value, and purpose is gone if we do. If God doesn't exist, then there is no such thing as meaning, value, and purpose. Absent of God, our lives do not matter. It's kind of like dust that we just brush off because it really is insignificant. And our lives would be analogous to that dust, and it won't matter. Our lives doesn't matter because there is no meaning, purpose, or significance. There's nothing. Our lives really don't matter if God doesn't exist because we're a byproduct of the universe. We just happen to exist because we came about when the universe went boom. We just magically appeared. So if God doesn't matter, or if God doesn't exist, that means our lives don't matter. There is no meaning, value, or purpose within our life. We need to understand this. And the analogy for this, or a good example of this, would be a story that was given in a fictional book, which is a story of an astronaut who goes out of space, right? And he's lost, and he doesn't know where he is. And he's going around, and he's like so depressed, and eventually he gives up. He's like, look, man, I'm bored. There's nothing to do, and I can't stay like this, any longer. So he picks up poison in his pocket. He drinks it to kill himself, because he's like, I want out of this misery. Like, he's in the middle of nowhere. It's just pitch black. There's nothing around him, and he's like, I can't stand this. So he picks up the poison and he drinks it. But instead of, it's a fictional book, people go along with this. So he picks up, instead of drinking poison, he reached into his other pocket and picked up potion. And this potion lets him live forever. So instead of killing himself, what he does is he drinks potion to make himself live forever. Mind you, in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody to talk to. There's nothing to look at. Yes, there's no cell phones, all right? There's no social media. There's nothing. He's just sitting down forever. How miserable is that situation?
Are we holding questions to the end?
Yes, absolutely. We don't have time for questions today. Even if I'm wrong, don't correct me. We don't have time for corrections. We okay? We okay? All right. So the idea here is analogous with the story. Our lives would be resembling the life of the astronaut. So boring, right? And nothing really matters because at the end of the day, we're all going to just disappear. So anything that we do in this universe really doesn't matter if God doesn't exist. So I hope just from this little exercise you guys are able to see that it's a very important question of asking, does God exist? Because if He doesn't, there's a lot at stake here. We're going to live a very depressed life. So we need to ask the question correctly, does God exist? And let's move on. hold your questions till the end. Like I said, like we gotta run, like really, really fast. So hold your questions till the end. How do we know God exists? First, we're gonna look at the ontological argument. Again, that's the study of ontology, meaning what exists and what doesn't. So there are 5 main premises. If you guys took this course before, we studied it under the Kalam cosmological argument, but it's the same thing, but this one is a little bit modified. There are basically 5 premises. Please put your notes down, look at me, and pay attention because this is very important and will be on the exam. You need to know it. There are 5 premises. All right, premise number 1. So you what's premise number 1?
Oh, everything has to have a beginning. What?
Okay, yeah, I'll just modify it. What's premise number 1?
Everything that begins to exist has to have a cause.
Everything that begins to exist, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise number 2. The universe has a beginning. Premise number 3. You guys don't need to look at your notes. We're going to look at every one of them in detail. Just stay with me. I want you guys to kind of know the overall gist of it. We're going to try to do this one more time. People are like, I'm still on 1. So, okay. Premise number 1. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise number 2. The universe has a beginning. Premise number 3. Following premise 1 and 2, because the universe has a beginning, it follows that the universe has a cause. So far we're good, right? This is when things could get a little bit confusing. Premise number 4. If the universe has a cause, the cause has to be uncaused, and it has to be a personal creator of the universe. Premise number 5. So it follows, because the universe does have a cause, a personal uncaused creator exists. We're gonna go through all this. I see a lot of confused faces. We're gonna go through them each one by one. So let's go by premise number 1. I just want you guys to hear it's in its entirety first. Then we're gonna go one by one. So premise number 1. Hopefully we understand premise number 1, right? Not that hard. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. It's basically the idea which, it's very simple. Nothing produces nothing. Something cannot be produced by nothing. What is the definition of nothing? What rocks dream about is the definition of nothing. What do rocks dream? No, they don't, right? So how can their dream produce the universe? What rocks dream about is the definition of nothing, because rocks don't dream. That's the idea. People are like, I don't get it. What do they dream about? No, that's the idea. They don't dream. Therefore, they can't produce anything, right? So, before the universe, we say there was no time, there was no space. It's very important. There was no space, there was no time. If I told you guys to close your eyes and imagine the universe before the Big Bang, a lot of people would imagine black area, right? A black space. But space is something. Space in itself started at the start of the universe, right? When time started is when space started. So there was no space, there was no time before the universe. So there was nothing. So it begs the question, how can this universe come about if there was nothing? So that's premise number 1 in its simplest form. But there are a lot of objections. And what I kind of want to focus on in this class is looking at the objections, because I've noticed that a lot of, especially these days, people try to twist a few things around and talk about a few things. So the number 1 is what scientists will tell you. If you say nothing, the universe can't come from nothing, they will be like, aha, the Casimir effect. Casimir effect. That is basically a situation where scientists take 2 uncharged metal plates. They take 2 uncharged metal plates. For example, if I have 2 charged metal plates, one is positive, one is negative, and I put them in close proximity, what happens? People, this is basic stuff. I'm worried. You have a positive metal next to a negative metal, and you put them in close contact, what happens? Attracted. Negative and negative. They're like, I don't know that one. I don't know. Negative and negative. Positive and positive. Now here's what happens. they take these metals and they uncharge it. So there's no positive, there's no negative. It's
Neutral.
uncharged. It's neutral. And they put them in what's known as a QED vacuum, quantum electrodynamic vacuum, right? So they put them in there, and then they put them in close proximity. Mind you, they are uncharged. It's a vacuum. And what they noticed is the fields surrounding the metal fluctuate. So you have virtual photons fluctuating, right? So the argument here is, here you put the metals in nothing, in a vacuum, and you have fluctuation, therefore nothing produces something. You see how they argue? This is what scientists will tell you. So you go, you take this class, you're like, nothing produces nothing, I know this, I'm ready to go. And they say, nope, did you know that the scientists put these metals in a QED vacuum and the virtual photons fluctuated? You're like, oh Jesus, he knows what he's talking about, right? And then you're confused. So how do we answer this? So that's the objection. The objection is, what about these metals that when you put them in close proximity in a vacuum, the fields surrounding the metals are fluctuating. The virtual photons is what they call them. How do we answer this? This is the rebuttal. Number one, the QED vacuum is a place where the system is in its ground state. Ground state meaning the minimum possible energy it can have. It's not absolute zero. What is it? The lowest possible. The last time I checked, people, the lowest possible energy does not mean zero. The lowest possible energy means, you guys guessed it right. It's the lowest possible energy level. So there is energy within the vacuum. So that, first of all, that's what's wrong with this system. The second thing that they're not going to tell you, but I will because I'm a nice guy, is the vacuum is space, right? The vacuum is space. We say that the universe, before it was created, there was no space. There was nothing. Space is something. So you can't say that, oh, nothing produced something. No, the space produced fluctuations. That's the other thing. And above all, you have the metals that you have to put in close proximity, right? So in this case, you're putting metal in a space and putting them in close proximity, and you're witnessing fluctuations of photons. So that's not surprising because you have something and then you're ending up with something. Here, what we need to see is a completeness of nothing. I don't want a vacuum, I want nothingness. No space. And then create the universe. Now that's hard. And that's impossible according to modern science. So this objection of the Casimir effect doesn't hold any water because it's not nothing, it's something. Does that make sense? You guys don't have to understand all the science, but if you kind of get the overall picture and understand that whenever they talk about vacuum, they're talking about space, and when we talk about the universe, there was no space, then you guys are good to go. That's the major thing that you guys need to get out of this. Again, if you guys are confused or whatever, I expect people to see me after class and talk to me. Another objection to premise number one. What's premise number one? I did not hear that at all. Everything has everythingus. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Can we ask Abid what the premise number one is? If I'm sleeping, don't bother me. That's his premise. Abid, you need to get up. You need to get up. I would rather prefer you sit down, but you're begging me to get you to stand up. Yeah, what's the first premise? Okay, you're taking too long. So here's the thing, people. Here's the thing. The second objection is, if I say, right, if I stand up here and say, everything that begins to exist has a cause, somebody would say, so who created God? Right? If you're gonna say that everything has a cause and whatever, who created God? That's what people would say. Simple here. Okay. Stay with me, people. I hope I don't lose anybody. There are two kinds of things that exist. Things that exist necessarily, like an abstract object or abstract number, I should say, and things that don't need to exist. Right? For example, the number 7 exists necessarily. Like, it doesn't need a cause for number 7. Why? Because it has always existed,
It's going to exist in every conceivable universe possible. Number 7 exists just because it's a number. It's an idea, right? It never started to exist. We don't say the number 7 began in 1957. You know, like it doesn't make sense. The number 7 was there. It was just there. Before the universe was there, we never used it, but it was there. After the universe was gone, the number 7 will still be there. Just because we didn't know about it, it doesn't mean the number 7 wasn't there. It's there, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. Why? Because it's a number. The other things are things that don't need to necessarily exist. For example, what? The universe is what? Something that doesn't necessarily need to exist. How do we know that? How do we know the universe doesn't necessarily have to exist? Yes? Kind of. Because there was a point where the universe didn't exist. Right? There was a point where the universe didn't exist, so it doesn't have to exist. It existed because, well, that's the question. Why does it exist? If it doesn't have to exist, why did it exist at the time when it existed? We believe that the universe, according to science, is 13.4 billion years old. Why did it start then? Why not before or after, right? So there must have been a reason to start at that point. Don't quote me on that. It's 13 point something. I guessed that. I just wanted to sound smart, y'all. People. So listen. So because now here's the catch. Because the number 7 cannot create the universe, right? The number 7 did not create the universe. I hope you guys know this, right? The number 7 cannot create the universe. So the creator of the universe must be an unembodied mind. It has to be a mind behind the universe. Because we know that abstract numbers cannot create it. Therefore, the unembodied mind has to be uncaused and has to be beginningless and timeless and spaceless because he has to be outside the domain. We'll get back to this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But the best way that you could rebut the objection of who created God is, it's simply, you don't need to answer it. You don't need to answer it. It's what's known as a red herring. Herring is a type of fish. It's like a silverfish, right? And if you see a red herring, what does it do? It distracts you because all those type of fish are silver. So when you see a red one, it will distract you, right? So the question, who created God, is there to confuse you of who created the universe. That's the question. The question is not who created God. The question is who created the universe. For example, if I ask David, hello, where did you get your sweater from? He's going to tell me Walmart. Because like, he's not doing so well right now. He's not doing so well right now. So to answer the question, where did you get the sweater from? Right? Are you guys with me? Shh. Dope. So to answer the question, where did you get your sweater from? I don't have to know where Walmart got that sweater from. Right? To answer the question, where did you get the sweater from? He just has to tell me where he got it from. I don't need to go the extra step and answer, where did Walmart get the sweater from? That's the second question. So an explanation does not need an explanation. It's a red herring. It's there to confuse you. If we're here to ask, who created the universe, God is sufficient answer. That's a sufficient answer. We can ask the question, who created God? We can ask that. But it's not related with the question, who created the universe. It's a secondary question that can be asked apart from the first question. Does that make sense? Don't get lost in that discussion of, I know after this, I know half of you guys are going to go and debate all your atheist friends. I know this. So the first question they're going to ask you is, who created God? Don't get distracted. No. First ask me to tell me who created the universe, right? And then the question, who created God, is a secondary question which can be answered, but it's not, we don't need to fuse it with the first question. Make sense? But we will answer the question, who created God, like in this class. You have to. Another objection to the premise. What's the first premise?
Everything that begins to exist.
Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The objection is, yeah, everything that begins to exist has a cause except for the universe. That's the objection. The objection is, well, yeah, but except for the universe. Some renowned theoretical physicists are saying that nowadays. Except for the universe does not have a cause, right? But sorry, we're not accepting any exceptions. You see what I did there? I did that myself. So we're not accepting any exceptions, and this is committing what's known as the taxi cab fallacy. Welcome, Garma. It's about time. No, welcome. Whenever እዚህ ጋር አለ I feel like I'm being audited. Alright, so are you guys with me? So if somebody says this is an exception to the rule, they're committing what's known as the taxi cab fallacy. Taxi cab fallacy is like a taxi cab, right? So if you're going and then you need a ride, you know, put your hand up and the taxi cab comes, and when you get to your destination, what do? You get out. Taxi cab fallacy is the same thing. It's basically you accept a certain theorem until it gets you to the destination that you need to get you, right? But then if you're not comfortable with what's next, you get off the train or the cab. We're in a cab. So we get off, right?
What?
I'm so serious. Nope, it's not impossible for me. It can't be impossible for you. No, go ahead. Nope. No, ተንበርከክ በአንድ እግር. I'm so serious. I'm so serious. I mean, you don't have time.
He's right here. Because he's a nice
በአንድ እግር. You want to do this? እሺ በደምብ ተንበርከክ. አየር ላይ እንዳልለው ደግሞ ተንበርከክ. እጅ ወደ ላይ. Taxi cab fallacy. Listen. The taxi cab fallacy. One last time, everybody listen, right? Taxi cab fallacy is the fallacy which says, like, just in a taxi cab, you get on the cab and you get off when you don't like something you don't see, or you get to your destination, right? You get off the cab when you get to your destination. It's not hard, right? The same way, the taxi cab fallacy is committed when you accept a theorem and go through the theorem as long as possible until you get to your destination and get off. In this case, we start the premise together in the cab saying everything that begins to exist has a cause. And they follow that theorem until they get to their destination. Their destination is the universe. So when it says, what about the universe? It has a beginning, therefore it has a cause. They get off that theorem. And they say, except for the universe. So that's the taxi cab fallacy. As you follow it until it comes something you don't like, then you get off and say, except for that. Right? That's the taxi, because you reached your destination and then you get off. That's the taxi cab fallacy. So you can't do that. You can't just say, there's an exception of the universe. Why is there an exception to the universe? Right? You've got to, someone has to articulate that argument. They can't just say there's an exception. Let's keep going. That was premise number 1. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The explanation does not need an explanation, Milo. Red herring.
Oh, right.
Okay. The universe. This is premise number 2. I don't think we're gonna finish today. The universe began to exist. That's premise number 2. What's premise number 1?
Everything has a cause.
What's premise number 1?
Everything
has a cause.
What's premise number 2? The universe began to exist. Listen, very, 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 very close. Universe could not have always existed. The universe could not have always existed. Alright? If the universe always existed, the number of past events would have been infinite, and infinity is not reality. Infinity is not reality. Are you guys with me? Okay.
Hey, that rhymed.
That did rhyme. How do you guys know? That rhymed.
Yeah.
That rhymed.
Stay in one spot.
Oh, hey, never. Because it was written.
Okay, everybody put your notes down and look at me. I promise you the following thing will be on the test. I need everybody to pay attention because it's about to get real or unreal, depending on how you think about it. Hilbert's paradox. Very confusing, but you gotta pay attention. If you pay attention, it's not hard at all. Hilbert's paradox is there to illustrate how infinity cannot be a real thing, right? It can't exist in the real world. It's a paradox that I'm going to explain. They call it the hotel paradox, right? Before we talk about the paradox, let me just give you a real example that you can understand. Let's say there's a hotel which only has 10 rooms, okay? 10 rooms, and a guest is occupying each one of the rooms, meaning there are 10 guests within the hotel, right? Let's say person A walks into the room. What's the guy in the front desk going to tell him? When the guy is going to say, can I check in? And then what's the guy going to say?
There's no more rooms.
There are no more rooms.
You can't be
No, like... I was like, wait, what? Am I missing? Did I mess up? So 10 people in the hotel. There are 10 rooms. A new guy comes in, person A. He's trying to check in, but he can't. Why? Because the rooms are full. Period. We're good to go. This is the easy one. Let's go to the hard one. Now, if we're to say that infinity is real, then let's put it to the test. Imagine this hotel has an infinite number of rooms, like a room down the street, an infinite number of rooms, and there's a guest occupying each one of the rooms.
Oh my God.
So there are infinite number of guests staying in the infinite number of rooms. We together. So the hotel room is full. No. Listen. Infinity, if we're gonna say, is a real thing that exists. And we're saying an infinite number of people are inside the room, an infinite number of rooms are there. Infinity equals infinity, right? Infinity equals infinity. So the hotel room is full. It is full. It's absolutely full. There are infinite number of rooms available. There are infinite guests staying at the hotel. The hotel is full. Now, person A looks across the street and he sees this tall hotel across the street. He's like, surely they have something there. He goes in, asks the guy in the front desk, can I check in? What is the guy going to tell him?
Yeah.
He's going to say, it's full, but come on down.
Yeah.
What's infinity plus 1? Infinity. They're full. But they're like, yeah, come, we're full, but yeah. And then he's able to stay in the other room that wasn't available. Infinity plus 1 equals infinity, right? Infinity. So he checks in, he's there, he's like, this is amazing. Like, it's full and I still got a room, like, this is amazing. So he gets online and goes on Twitter, Facebook, and Picturegram. What's that one? Instagram. And all the infinite number of social medias that are available out there. And he brags about how he's staying at this hotel. It goes viral, and then an infinite number of people hear about this. And they come to check into the hotel. They got to see this. There's an infinite number of people, plus 1, staying at this hotel, which is full, right? It's full. Now, an infinite number of people are coming to check into the hotel. What's the guy at the front desk going to tell them? But come on down, right? So they go on and they check in and everything like that. But here's when things get really bizarre. You guys ready? That wasn't even what's bizarre. What's really bizarre about this is the guy in room number 7 is like, it's extremely loud, right? There's like all these noises. It's like so many people. I can't take this anymore. I'm going to check out. The minute he checks out, the hotel's no longer full. Room number 7 is available. It's not full. You see? When an infinite number of people were staying there, it was full. When an infinite number of people came, it was full. But it was able to do it. When one person leaves, suddenly it's vacant. It's available. Back in business. Does that make sense?
No.
That the math wipes out. Math works out.
It does.
Yeah. I didn't say infinity minus 1. It is infinity. But guess number 7 is the one leaving, and guess room number 7 is available. You see, the whole point of this exercise is to illustrate to us how infinity cannot exist in reality. It exists in theory, and you could do the math and it works beautifully, but it cannot exist in reality. That's the problem. Infinity minus 1 is infinity, but then when you take 7 out, you can't say you have full number. It's full again, which is weird. And the whole exercise is just that, is to show you how bizarre the idea of infinity is. Therefore, an infinite number, the whole point of this is to show you infinity cannot exist. Therefore, the number of history in past time cannot be infinity. Therefore, the universe had to have a beginning. لمن أتمبرككم.
No, the gummy almost.
Okay. تمبرككنا علىكم. Okay, تمبركك. وين قوم الشيء? I feel like being nice. After all, تمكاتنا. Okay. Since you cannot count to infinity, listen, Abel, listen. Since you cannot count to infinity, we cannot count from infinity. That's your fill in the blank. If you can't count to infinity, you cannot count from infinity. We're together. All right, let's keep going. I think we're not going to do it today. Okay. Let's keep going. In 1929, Edwin Hubble, a scientist, used the Hubble telescope to look, and he saw, you guys listening, right? I need everybody to be with me today. Edwin Hubble, in 1929, was using the Hubble telescope. He saw, and he noticed that the lights amongst adjacent galaxies appear to be reddish. Are we together? Is everybody listening? Edwin Hubble, looking, he sees some of the lights near the galaxies being reddish. This reddish light was an indication that the light waves were being stretched, kind of like a balloon. A balloon, if you blow it, right, the color is going to change the more you blow, right? And just like that, he thought, Hubble, of course, later on it was proved, that the lights were being stretched among adjacent galaxies, right? They were moving apart from each other. The light is being stretched, and that appeared to be reddish. So he thought, using the theory of relativity, if you go backward in time, if they're going like this, you go back in time, what are they going to do? Whoop! You see? If they went like this, before they went, whoop, that's going to be on the test.
I don't understand.
They won't walk. It's gonna be
Okay, let's try this again. In 1929, Edwin Hubble went on the Hubble telescope, and he noticed that the galaxies at the edge appeared to be light, right? Like light reddish color. He observed that. What that means is the galaxies were moving apart from each other. And as they were moving apart from each other, that means the light waves were being stretched out. Now, if the galaxies are being stretched out as time goes forward, you're able to rewind the clock. That means that they had to go wop. That's what wop means. We're together. We're together. So essentially what this means is there had to be a single point at which the universe must have started. And when I mean a point, I don't mean a point. I mean a point of nothingness. A point of nothingness. And that's what we believe. There had to be a point of nothingness where the universe started out from. And then it exploded to the universe that we know it today. So the universe, again, had a beginning. Okay? Second law of thermodynamics. I don't want to get too deep into this. But basically what it says is an isolated system, listen very carefully, an isolated system such as the universe is ourselves. In fact, actually, did you know that the universe is the actual real isolated system? When you talk about system mechanics, system dynamics, and all these things, you need a system and you need to isolate it from its environment to really measure what's going on in it, right? But everything else, there's like minimum amount of whatever acting on that system, right? But the universe is truly isolated in the realist terms, and that is a system, right? And so anyway, third law of thermodynamics says an isolated system naturally its entropy increases. Its entropy increases. What is entropy? Simple term, it's the measure of disorder. Measure of disorder. The equation is right there. A small increment of entropy is equal to the change in heat transfer over temperature. The best way to describe this, Abe, I'm gonna make you stand on your head. I don't care. I don't care. Huh? Q is heat transfer. It's not S. Please don't say that. It's delta. She said yes. So, what does this mean? What does disorder mean? If you have hot coffee is usually served around 160 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit when it's served. Okay? Room temperature is?
68.
I don't know what kind of rooms you stay at, but my room is around 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So,
Sorry.
that's a huge difference. It's like 4.
4 degrees.
Are we together? Are we together? So, what happens when you have the hot coffee served at 160 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit? You put it in room temperature. What's going to happen? That's the second law of thermodynamics. That's what it means. It means that heat goes from hot to cold, and then it's going to equally disperse throughout the room. Now, here's the catch. The more you leave it out, what's the lowest temperature that coffee is going to get to? 72. It can't get lower. Unless what happens? Unless the room temperature goes down, but assuming that can't happen, what else needs to happen? External, like force, right? You need to put ice in it, or you need to put it in the fridge or something to make it colder, right? That's the only way it's going to get colder. Is that, for example, let's say from 160 drops down to 100. Can it get back up to 120? You need external force, right? So what a second law of thermodynamics tells us is each system is going to, number one, reach thermal equilibrium, right? There's going to be a level of entropy that it cannot pass. It's going to give off heat, and eventually it's going to stop. It's going to be maintained. When that happens, that is, in the case of the universe, so the universe is no exceptions, right? So it's constantly giving off energy. Did you know that? There's going to be a point where we reach thermal equilibrium, and that is known as heat death. Heat death means we die. There's no more energy for anything. Like no more energy for life. No more. It has huge conclusions to it. Like a lot of bad things are gonna happen, and that's what scientists are trying to avoid. Like we are approaching heat death. We are approaching heat death. Conservation of energy, and all these things are talking about it, because the more energy we're using up, the more energy we're giving off, and the more energy we give off, the closer we're reaching the thermal equilibrium point. Once we touch it, what happens? We die. That's it. We're gone. Sorry, people. That's what happened. So, why are we talking about the second law of thermodynamics? Here's the catch. If the universe existed since eternity, why haven't we already reached thermal equilibrium? You see what I'm saying? We know we're going to reach it. Scientists know this. In the distant future, they're like, oh, we're going to reach it. It's like a real thing is going to happen. So if we know it's going to happen, why haven't we already reached it? And if we reached it, that means there's no energy for anything. Nothing can be lost. And then it's energy that you're giving up is called lost energy. You can't get it back. So that's it. That's just it. So since that hasn't happened, we know the universe could not have always existed. So the coffee can only get hotter if an external force is applied to it. Objection. Objection to the second premise. What's the second premise? What's the objection? What's the objection? No, I'm sorry. What's the second premise?
The universe means everything.
What's the first premise? Hey, Amano, Abid. What's the first premise? That's the problem. Think about that.
Everything that.
Say the second word. Let's keep going. Objection, oscillating universe. Oscillating universe. What is the oscillating universe, people? The oscillating universe is a theory which says the universe is in a constant state of expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. And because that happens, right? Because that happens, right? If you're always going through the cycle, that means the universe have always existed. Please. I don't care. I don't care. If the universe is constantly going through these cycles, it means that the universe always existed, right? So they would say, yes, it blew up and you had your little Big Bang and everything, we'll give it to you. But the problem is it's expanding and contracting, and we've been going through these cycles, therefore we know that the universe never had a beginning, therefore it could not have a cause. That's just the way the universe is. Here's the rebuttal. The second law of thermodynamics also says that, remember I told you guys about the thermal equilibrium point? For example, let's say you're at room temperature is 80, okay? Room temperature is 80, and the coffee is served at 160 Fahrenheit. This is simple math, please don't get it wrong. What's the maximum amount of heat the coffee can give up? 80, right? 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the difference. Makes sense, right? What second law of thermodynamics says is if these cycles keep happening, so the maximum level of entropy is 80. That's how we will define it. What the second law of thermodynamics says is even if these oscillating universes happen, let's say the maximum entropy level at the first cycle when it expanded and contracted was at 10, right? So it contracts and then expands. It's going to accumulate the 10 from the previous one and add on another 10. What are we at now? 20, right? It's going to expand and contract. Then it's going to accumulate the 20 and add on a 10. What is that? 30, and then 40, and then 50, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't just delete the entropy, it accumulates it because it's still the same system, it's just contracting and expanding. Makes sense, right? So they know this. This is the second law of thermodynamics. Knowing this, they measure the current level of entropy, and the scientists have said, even if this oscillating universe is true, even if it's true, they're not saying it is, even if it's true, we cannot have gone through more than 100 cycles of this expansion and contraction, even if it is true. They're not saying it's true, but they're saying based on the current entropy levels, the maximum amount of cycles that we could have went through is 100 cycles of this expansion and contraction. This is very important because it means the universe had a beginning, an absolute beginning. It's possible that we oscillated back and forth, but we'll give it to them. It didn't. The main thing is, the main thing is, we know that the universe had an absolute beginning. That's the point of this, the second premise. It had an absolute beginning. Why did it start? If it did have 100 cycles, why did it start 100 cycles ago? Another objection to the second premise. What's the second premise? What's the first premise? So another objection to the second premise is the bubble universe. What's the bubble universe? It's exactly what the word says. Imagine there's a mega universe, chilling, and then inside of it are mini universes that pop into being. Like you ever played with like the bubble stuff? Kind of like that, right? You remember like you have these bubbles. What do you call them? Oh, bubbles?
Yeah.
You know, if I started this conversation with, remember bubbles? You guys would be like, what are you talking about? You're so weird. But anyway, please allow me, please. So the bubble universe simply says, what? What does it say? It says that when the universe popped into being, and then it pops out. So they say the second law of thermodynamics is not applied to the mega universe. It only applies to the small universe. Therefore, the mega universe could have existed forever. And maybe this specific universe started at a particular point, but the mega universe always existed, and that was the issue. Here's the thing. In 2003, three scientists by the name of it's the BGV theorem. So it's the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem. And these three scientists came up with, I'm going to spare you with the theory and the equation and all that because I don't know it. But the conclusion is each imaginable universe, please listen, each imaginable universe had to have a beginning. Each imaginable universe had to have an absolute beginning, and this was discovered in 2003 based on the science that they came up with. And these are not apologists; these are scientists who came up with this conclusion, and this is being accepted in modern day. So you guys are going to hear about it more. But the major thing is, according to the second law of thermodynamics, like we said, each system reaches thermal equilibrium, meaning if the mega universe existed forever, it should have reached thermal equilibrium, meaning that heat death. So nothing should have happened anyway. Make sense? So the universe had an absolute beginning. Okay. Second premise finishes there. What's the first premise? What's the second premise? Therefore it follows, are we together? It follows that the universe has a cause. It has to be, right? If everything that begins to exist exists, or everything that begins to exist has a cause, if the universe has a beginning, it has to follow that the universe has a cause. It has to follow. So let's look at number 4. If the universe has a cause, then the uncaused personal creator of the universe exists. Okay, number 4. If the universe has a cause, does that make sense? Then an uncaused, it doesn't make sense. I'll explain it. Personal creator of the universe exists. Everybody go down to the next page with the graph. And I made a graph of a galaxy on graph paper just for Avi. Oh, you like graph paper too? So that picture is supposed to be a picture of the universe. I drew it myself. Whatever. So the universe, imagine it on this system, right? So the universe is bounded by space. Remember, space started at the time of the universe. Time started at the beginning of the universe. The universe is bounded by energy. It is caused, but God has to be outside of this domain. Do you see what I'm saying? There is no way God could be within the universe, because if He's within the boundaries of the universe, that means He cannot come as the universe is coming. You said why? Oh, okay. I thought somebody said why.
Why? He's so excited.
No, I'm not excited. I thought it's a straight look. If the universe is in this boundary, right, and we're saying the universe was created, God cannot be within the boundaries, because the boundaries started when the universe started. You see what I'm saying? So if the universe started, or if time started when the universe started, God can't be bound to time. He has to be outside of it. Because if He's within the boundaries of time, then when the universe started, there's no way like He could have caused it. Remember, we already looked at the cause. There has to be a cause. So now we're talking about what kind of cause exists, right? The cause has to be someone who's outside the universe's boundaries. The universe is bounded. It has a beginning. So the cause cannot have a beginning. Cannot have a beginning. This universe changes, right? And change is the boundaries of, okay, the best way to do this is this church, right? it's very hard to make a church while you're in it. Like if you're gonna construct it, right? The best way to construct it and see how the church is gonna be is to be outside of the church, right? Or like the main parts of the church, to really like construct the church, you need to be outside the church. Yeah, you could go in and fix like the small things that need to be fixed and all this stuff, but the main construction needs to happen where? Outside. And that's how you're gonna make it. But if you're inside, then it's gonna be very, very hard, like constructing this whole thing. Right? A little bit.
Yeah, because if he's inside, then that means he was created with it together.
Right, exactly. But I'm trying to show why he's not created. So I'm trying to show why he wasn't created. If time in itself, right? If time in itself, and I don't know how I can describe this, but if time started at the time where the Big Bang happened, if time in itself, and this is a very hard concept to understand, if it started at the time of the Big Bang, there is no way we can say God is bounded by time because he existed before. He's the cause of the universe. So if the time is something that came along with the universe or because of the universe, we're saying that the cause has to be outside of time. And because space started at the time of the universe, God is spaceless, beginningless, changeless. We'll go through this. I can't spend any more time on this because we have other things to look at. And number 4, so the fourth one is if the universe has a cause, then an uncaused personal creator of the universe exists. And number 5, an uncaused personal creator of the universe who is beginningless, changeless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, and enormously powerful exists. Review this. It's very confusing. It's very confusing, I know. Look at it, ponder on it, ask questions. We gotta move forward. We gotta move forward. Okay, let's look at the teleological argument or the fine-tuning argument. Alright, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'll let you guys read it on your own. Like I said, we're running out of time. It's kind of loud. Basically, as you study, the fine-tuning argument is this in summary. Are you guys listening? Fine-tuning argument says the universe is set up in a way that we have what's known as universal constants, like the constant number or the constant figure that we're given for gravitational force, for the weak forces that keep the nucleus together, and the minimum amount of entropy level needed to permit life on this earth, and all these things, right? And scientists discover that if you move these things by like a small 1/billionth of a power, then the universe would not allow life to exist in this life. You know, and what are the chances of that happening? For example, it's said that since the beginning of time, there's been 10 to the 18th power of seconds since the beginning of time. It's said that 10 to the 80th power, 10 to the 80th power subatomic particle exists within this universe. Keeping these numbers in mind, right? 10 to the 18th and 10 to the 80th, very easy to remember. Understand this. The chances of this universe, just by chance, allowing the minimum amount of entropy level to exist in a way that allows us to live is 1 in 10 to the 10th times 123. Or that's 10 to the 1,230th power. That is very small, and that's just the entropy level. When you talk about the chances of the weak forces existing by chance is 1 in 10 to like the 100th or 200th power. Some ridiculous numbers. When you put all of them, combine them, and say what are the chances of these things happening by chance, I don't think so. Let's look at the objection. The objection says, what if we got lucky? Yeah, it's very rare. Very unlikely, but what if we got lucky? For example, if I printed a billion tickets, like lottery, right? Then, by chance, it's very unlikely for you to win the ticket, but somebody has to win. Like one person is going to win the lottery, right? Therefore, maybe this universe did happen by chance. That's not the argument. That's the wrong analogy. This is the rebuttal. I'm telling you the rebuttal. The analogy that we need to give is, for example, let's say I will guess a number between 1 to 10 to the 1,230 power. And David, you will pick a number. If you get it wrong, if you get it right, you get to live. If you get it wrong, I'll kill you.
Say 7. You can't go on with 7.
Pick a number.
Say 7.
He said
Right? So do you see the analogy here? Do you see the analogy? That's the chances. What are the chances of somebody, forget about all these ridiculous numbers, what's the chances of like one, see Baunet?
I'm sorry. No.
What's the chances of somebody guessing a number right on their first chance between 1 through a billion? Very unlikely. Very unlikely. It's kind of like, I gave you guys this example to really help you guys understand what I'm saying. I gave you this example like 2 years ago, if you guys remember. You know those ABC like soups or whatever? Cereal?
Oh yeah.
Soup, alphabet soups, right?
That's what you said. Cereal before.
Imagine in the morning, right? In the morning, you wake up and then you see on the table written the words, clean up your room, love mom. You see that on the table, okay? What's the first thing you're gonna assume? Oh my goodness, the soup fell and then it fell on the table and it formed all these words together for me to understand this by chance. It could have happened by chance. And I actually had somebody argue that with me, right? It is possible. It is really possible. But, I mean, is it realistic, right? It's not realistic. The chances of the soup falling down on the table and really, like, mixing all these words in the right way so that I can understand, but no other letters fell down. It's very unlikely. So that's the analogy that we need to give. But most importantly, going back to the second law of thermodynamics, a disorder cannot come from order. Meaning, when the hot coffee is sitting in the room temperature, heat is being evenly distributed out, right? When the universe went boom, what happened is, according to E equals mc squared, energy was being equally distributed. Equally. So what we should expect is to see a homogeneous universe. Like, the universe should be equally, like, the same. Even if life does exist, we should all be the same. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all of us. You know what I mean? But we're not. Like, life is different, and there are different things out there, whatever. So that's not what happens. So so these are the type of things that we see. Anti-logical argument basically says we're fine-tuned in such a way that if we weren't tuned in the way that we are right now, life would not have been able. And I'm not talking about life like us. I'm not saying like bacteria wouldn't exist. Like nothing would have existed unless the universe was tuned in the way that it was. Moral argument, I can say,
System goes from
order to disorder. Moral argument, I can say this is the most misunderstood argument. A lot of people misunderstand it. A lot of people. And in a lot of textbooks, you guys are going to see this written the wrong way. So please pay attention. 9 out of 10 times, people misunderstand it. First, let me start out by saying what this statement, let me start off by telling you guys what the argument is. The argument is basically saying if God does not exist, there's no good, bad, morality, immorality, everything is permitted. Everything is permitted. There's no good, bad, nothing is immoral, nothing is moral, nothing is right or wrong, everything is permitted, everything is allowed. And the thing with this is, if God does not exist, I'm not saying everything is allowed right now. I'm saying if God does not exist, then that is true. And the thing with this is, a lot of people misunderstand. I'm not saying people who don't believe in God are immoral. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying people who don't believe in God, they don't know what is right or wrong. That's not what I'm saying. You don't need a belief in God. That's not the point of this argument. And that's what a lot of people turn it out to be. They say, when people bring the moral argument, they say, yeah, believing in God is good. Just look at the people who don't believe in God. There are a lot of people who are moral who may not believe in God. And there are a lot of people who are immoral who still believe in God. The argument is independent of the belief of God. The actual moral argument. The moral argument is saying if a God exists, then morality in itself does not exist. Objective morality doesn't exist. And actually, the one group of people who agree with this statement the most are atheists. Let's look at one, my favorite one, Richard Dawkins. I'm kidding, by the way, I hate him. I hate this guy. Hate is wrong, love everybody. I forgot about the camera. We really got to edit these things off. Richard Dawkins says there's at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference. We're machines for programming DNA. He said the choices of becoming Hitler or Mother Teresa is like going between McDonald's and Burger King. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. If God does not exist, everything is pointless. Let me give you guys a question. Let me ask you guys a question. Let's do an exercise. Let's do an exercise.
Yes.
If I kill David,
Of course. It's wrong.
would it be wrong?
Yes.
When though?
All the time.
Would it be wrong
Right now?
if I killed him?
Yep.
What if you killed somebody else before?
No, just right now, I just kill him.
For no reason, right?
Huh? If I kill him because he bought his sweater from Walmart, is that wrong?
Yes.
Listen, everybody. Oh, she was like, I'm not going to take any classes for killing in it. She's smart now.
No, my keys, man. Oh, so you have it.
All right, you guys answer the question. I'm so serious. Would killing him be wrong?
Yes.
Not really.
Answer the question. Yo, they're not defending me.
It's very wrong.
Nah.
You're a bad person.
No, I'm not gonna die.
Would killing him be wrong?
Yes.
You sure?
You're not gonna say yes.
Raise your hand if you think killing David is wrong.
I'm not gonna do
David, you see this, right?
Yeah. Majority raise their hand. It's a win.
All right. Why is it wrong? Like seriously, like I'm so serious about this question. By the way, why is it wrong?
Why not?
Why is it wrong? Now we're assuming that God does not exist. I'm not saying we believe in God or whatever. I'm saying God
No,
does
it's
not
not
exist.
wrong.
Why is it wrong?
It's not.
So you just kill people?
Assuming God just
Yeah.
exists.
So what?
It is wrong.
Yeah.
But nobody killed.
Huh? Why does that matter? Yeah.
Because it's not productive. It's not helpful.
He's taking a chair. Like let's say the room was full, and like there was a person that came in, and I killed him.
I'm still taking a chair.
And so like I would put him in the corner.
Now the chair is messed up.
It's not nice.
That's my choice though.
It's not nice to kill people.
Wait, and you said it's not. You said what did you say?
Whatever.
How do you know what's useful? What is useful? For me, this is very useful.
You really wanted that chair.
It's useful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not around.
Why?
You're on my side, right?
Because you wouldn't want to kill you. Yeah.
Well, so it's immoral because I could get caught. What if I killed him in private and got away with it?
You still like.
You still have to live with knowing the
Can I answer?
It's in
So
your
what?
conscience.
You died already,
Yeah.
so
I can't hear you.
Yeah.
But who created it? I mean,
So we're talking about conscience, but you're saying it's not morally wrong. You can say I feel a certain way about it. I feel tingly. You know what I mean? Okay, but like, is it wrong though? I'm asking, is it wrong? Why is it wrong? I mean, why is it wrong? Let's talk about this. Save his life, people.
I'm not dying.
Save his life.
I'm not going out that easy.
you can't answer that.
Why can't you answer it?
Because it has to be somewhere in our life.
You guys, listen.
Oh my God.
Listen. Hell! I'm gonna kill you.
It's okay. It's okay. Is there-
Stop saying that.
I'm gonna. Oh, I can't kill you. You are. Chicate. Hell!
Oh my God.
I got him on tape.
Yeah.
So
Not gonna be able to edit tonight. All right, go ahead.
You can't really answer it if
Why
it's-
can't you answer it?
Because it could be subjective. You cannot, your moral cannot be feeling guilty of killing him if you didn't have some time in your life that
That is
killing
not
was
right.
wrong.
So, and
Is that how everybody feels?
You're not answering me.
you're wrong. And I can say you are wrong because if I watch, don't ask me why I watch what I watch,
What?
but I watch a lot of documentaries about like killers and stuff. I said don't ask me why. And even people who rape people, right? Like rapists or whatever, they will sit down in an interview and tell people like, I got an urge out of killing them, and I got and I got away with it, and I got high, whatever. And then they're like, so I wanted to keep doing wrong. You see what I'm saying? No, not like I've yet to hear a rapist who's like, I raped her to help her out. You know what I mean? Like nobody does that. It's like they're like they're either mad at the way they were raised and like they get a thrill out of the high they get by getting away with it or whatever, but they understand what they're doing is wrong. They know it's wrong. They know it's wrong. Even mass murderers, right? Like killers. They know what they're doing is wrong. They do it anyway. Like it's addictive to do the wrong thing. And they're like, I guess I'll burn in hell and everything. This is how they talk. But I'm not saying like, they're great people and everything, whatever. But what I am saying is they know what they're doing is wrong and that's why they're hiding. Now I'm saying, so they understand that. But is that morally wrong to kill someone, objectively?
How can you objectively talk about morals?
Objective. I'm not talking about so I'm not that's a very good question, but I'm not talking about objective morality in every instance. I'm not talking about objective morality because there are instances where you're like, this is extremely immoral, and you're like, well, no, it's more, and you could debate about it, right? But it's like raping an innocent girl wrong. Could that ever be right? Yeah. Yeah. The new person in the class. Manos Miss? Yeah. How are you? No, that's the other one. That's the other one.
What's your last name?
You could argue that they only feel bad because society says it's bad, not because it's morally wrong.
So, if there was a society who said it's okay to kill children, would we be okay with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been many societies that have said that, and there are many societies.
We're okay with it. I'm saying we're okay with we're okay with that.
We lived in that society.
Not lived in that society. What I'm saying is, in the society that we live in today, if we came across a society which said killing innocent children is wrong, how we would approach that,
I
right?
would say it's wrong because we, as the society, disagree with their society's beliefs.
But who's to say that we're right and they're wrong?
Nobody.
So
She's
They
saying
could
we
be
can't
right and
say
we
that.
could be right.
see, that's the debate here. That's exactly the debate. The debate is, it's not according to society. Even in societies where they do kill children, they kill children from other, like, neighboring whatever. And I'm not saying this is, I'm not explaining why it's okay to kill them. But, like, they're not, according to them, it's like a spiritual ritual thing that they're doing. And I've read about those societies, but they're doing it for a specific reason. And they think they're doing it for a higher God or when they're at war with each other or whatever. That's why they do it. Right? And one society, like the cannibals who eat people, think that, like, the evil spirits are inside of them. And it's like the what is it? Their enemies that they do it to. They don't do it to their own, like, brothers and neighbors, right? They don't do it to their own children. They don't do it to, like, what they consider innocent. So what my question is if we know if that person doing the killing sees that baby as innocent and rapes them anyway without any justification, is that wrong? And I think the answer in any society is yes, because even in the societies that do that, if another person came and did that to their family member, they would get angry and retaliate, which shows you there's a sense of morality right? There's a sense of right or wrong. Like, you don't touch my children, because my children are innocent. Your children are wicked. And I'm not saying that's okay. What I'm saying is there's still a sense of objectively right and wrong. If you're innocent, don't touch them. If they're not, what is innocent? We could debate about that. So the point is, because there's this objectivity, and that's what I mean by objectivity, right? There's, at the lowest level, we can agree that if someone is innocent, they don't have to die. And killing them will be wrong. And that's, what the argument is about. So the question being, so who created the standard? Who created the standard? The one thing that we can accept is, like, there is no morality. Everything is permitted. Everything is right. Everything is wrong. So we can just do whatever we want. And really, it's about what society says. So as long as I could get away from society, right? As long as I'm not caught, then it's okay. Even with the children, like people who rape children, as long as they don't get caught, it's okay. That's what it means if morality doesn't exist. But if morality exists, even if they're caught or not, that action of them raping is what is wrong. And if that is true, that means there's a standard. If there's a standard, then we've got to beg the question, who created the standard? The next argument is very short and simple, the historical argument. Since the beginning of time, people at one time or another have at least thought about a higher being. This is just a natural desire. I mean, we could look at history, and each society has wanted some type of connection with a higher being. In the story of Noah, oh, I told you you can sit down.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I forgot.
Oh, you were about
in the story of Noah, we know the story of Noah, right? I hope you know the story of Noah, people. So, like, I was watching this TV show, and, like, somebody was arguing the story of Noah never happened. And I was like, oh, dear Lord Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, don't go about it definitely happened, right? So I'm getting, like, very defensive. And he said something that really, like, threw me off, right? Really threw me off. He said, did you know that, like, societies in different part of the world, they have some type of Noah story. Like, it's not just, like, for Israelites, right? If you go to other parts of the story, like in whatever, in ancient times, they have a story very similar to Noah. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then, so the guy was like, what makes your Noah story any different than their Noah story? And I was like, you got me there, right? Like, what can you do? Like, that's it, we give up. Like, I'm an atheist, you know what I mean? So, like, but what the guy talking to him said, he was like, that's precisely the point. The fact that each society had some sort of a Noah story lets you know that some type of event took place in this world.
Exactly what I was
You see what I'm saying? No, you didn't say that, David.
I was thinking.
David. Go get another sweater.
You're on tape.
So it means that they couldn't have, like, this story didn't come out of the blue moon, right? It didn't just jump down. It didn't just come here, right? From heaven. It didn't come down here from heaven. For if it did, that in itself is a miracle. If the story just came down from heaven, that in itself is a miracle. But also what it means is that there's some event that took place that was very similar to the Noah story, and that's why everybody wrote about it. That means there was a huge flood years and years ago that some type of boat saved X amount of people. All right? Of course, our story is the true one, and everybody else is lying. That's what we'll tell the world. The point is, when you keep looking at history, each society has some form of a God that they believe in, and that form of a God, since that's there, that means we have a natural desire to believe in God. And of course, the Bible backs it up. In Psalm chapter 40, verse 8, it says, I delight to do your will. Oh my God, your law is within my heart. So we believe, according to Scripture, that God wrote the laws. And listen, you guys, We're not done with class. We believe that God wrote the laws in our heart, and that's why we believe what we believe. It's 2:30. I said that we were going to finish the class at 2:30. Of course, from in the future, we're going to finish at 2:30 because we're going to be doing presentations. I think you will be very interested in that, Zedema. But you have to join the class, and I'll see if I have enough space for you. So next week, what are we learning about next week?
God's existence, part 2.
What are we learning about next week?
Part 2.
The Odyssey. Thank you, exactly. I don't know why people are talking. So next week is the Odyssey, the problem of suffering. Please go online and read about it. What I say every class applies even in this class. Don't believe anything I wrote on the paper. I might have made everything up. Everything.
That's a miracle.
That is a miracle. Okay, questions. You have one question. Was that your question?